All right, in this demo, we're going to do the flat felled seam. This is another self-enclosing, self-finishing seam, much like the French seam. All right, so you're going to use this pattern, our template here, and you're going to cut two pieces of fabric. Here's a fabric, and here are my two pieces. Okay, we have a right side and a wrong side. And the way we start this one, or actually, now this seam, we want to finish it at 3/8 of an inch, okay, when it's done. So the seam allowance on here is actually 5/8 of an inch, all right? Notice the side with seam allowance, okay, has the notch. So there's my two notches right there. What we're going to actually do, typically we put right sides together when we sew a seam. We're going to start by putting wrong sides together. So go ahead and you'll line up your notch, your two notches here. You'll put wrong sides together, like so. If you want, you can put a pin or two in there. And we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch this at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, we're at the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch this at 5/8 of an inch. We're going to back tack at the beginning and end. Here we go. And back tack at the end. There we are. Okay, let's clip our threads. And there it is stitched at 5/8 of an inch. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is what happens here is, notice here's my seam allowance, okay? And this is a seam that you find on jeans and kids' clothes because it's a very strong seam. We're going to trim this side, the right side of it. We're going to trim this seam allowance back we're going to trim it back 1/4 of an inch, okay? So let's go back to the cutting table and mark that on there. All right, we're back. This is the seam here that I'm going to trim back. So trim off 1/4 of an inch, and I want to mark it precisely. Now, this seam is not necessarily an easy to do by hand and make it look perfectly nice. Usually there's feet that will do this seam for you that will fold the fabric under as you stitch. In factories, they have machines that obviously stitch it in all in one go. But since we're just on home sewers or industrial machines, we have to do all the work. So it's kind of this precision work, and it can be difficult to make it look done nicely like it's done in a factory, just because of the different things you have to do. All right, there we go. We've trimmed off 1/4 of an inch. Now let's grab our iron and ironing board. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set in my stitches and give this a nice press flat, like so. Then what's going to happen is I want to fold. All right, so notice now I have my longer seam allowance here, all right, and then here's my shorter one. I'm going to fold over 1/4 of an inch, okay? This one that's longer, I'm going to fold it so that the cut edge, okay, of the shorter one ends up right in the crease. I don't want to fold this too much where I bunch this cut edge up or bunch this inside. I want this to fold over right so it's right on the crease, okay, or right in the crease. So let's go ahead and fold this over. All right. Now I'm going to fold over all of it to one side, okay? Because as you can see, we don't want to see any of this cut edge. You want this to be nice and clean finish. We're going to fold it all over to the other side and make sure both sides of our seam allowance are pulled nice and flat in the opposite direction, and we're going to press it down flat. And make sure you don't have any pleats or we didn't press any folds into it or anything. Check it from the back side now, make sure it worked out correctly. Looks like it did. Give it a good press here too. There we are. All right, so now we're ready to go back to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch nice and close to this edge that we folded under. All right, we're back at the machine. Let's go ahead and we're going to stitch nice and close to this edge right here. If you need to put some pins in, you can. And here's my crease, right, that I folded under. I'm going to try to stitch nice and close to that, right along here. Okay, make sure you back tack at the beginning and end. Back there we are. Cut our threads. Okay, so there it is, sewn. It's the right side. Flip it around. That's what the wrong side looks like. We'll go back and give it one more press. Okay. Press it nice and flat. All right, and there it is, the flat felled seam. And here's the wrong side of it, and the right side of it. All right, it's all done.